People in the highest levels of NFL media are now trying to allude to a split between Raiders quarterback Derek Carr and head coach Josh McDaniels. Colin Cowherd, somebody who respects Derek Carr and admires Derek Carr, is now even talking about the potential of this guy being on a different team next year.
I think it is time for both Derek and the Raiders, but all relationships, they're not all meant to last forever.
And we saw after that devastating loss to the Jaguars, what did Derek Carr say? He said there's a lot he wants to say right now about the offensive struggles, but he's got to keep his mouth shut and he's going to handle it in private.
You know, I think there's a lot I want to say, but if I'm honest, I don't need to say it here,
And a lot of us are wondering, is this about Josh McDaniels? The Raiders were clicking in the first half of the game. Davante Adams was absolutely going off. 2 touchdowns in the first half, over 100 yards. And then that all stopped and they had 0 yards in the second half. And it makes you wonder, how does that happen against a weak Jaguars team? That only happens when the coach starts to intentionally go away from Davante Adams and prevent it from happening. So the frustration of Derek Carr leads us to believe that maybe there's something bigger going on here. Maybe these two are not on the same page, and if they're not on the same page, we know who the odd man out is, because Mark Davis has made it very clear that Josh McDaniels will be the head coach for years to come. When you say years to come, that means at least 2+ years. Meanwhile, Derek Carr signed a contract extension in which he has a 1 year out. Josh McDaniels can move on from this guy if he wants to, if he does not like him. We have reached our goal of 33,000 subscribers. Can we get to 34,000 by the next video? Click that red subscribe button. You will not regret it. And we're wondering right now, are the Raiders in a rebuild mode now that they are 2-6? The hopes for the playoffs is almost completely shut. There's probably like a 5% chance, an absolute miracle that could happen. And if you're rebuilding, it's not far-fetched to think that you're going to switch out the quarterback as well. We've seen the Raiders this whole entire season start this process of loading away players from the old regime and bringing in their own guys. Abram has just been released. Jonathan Hankins was shipped away. Alec Ingold was never even given a chance. Alex Leatherwood released, not even allowed to be a backup player on the team. Denzel Perryman, no contract extension there yet. And now you have this article here where they're saying, hey, is there a rift or a little disconnect between Derek Carr and McDaniels? They're trying to claim Vic Tafur said something, but in my opinion, Raiders beat misquoted Vic Tafur here. They say, hey, there's obviously a little disconnect between the coach and QB. Carr wasn't saying that he was doing exactly what Josh wants all those times by accident, but you really can't find this quote. Even in the article that they link right here, kind of disingenuous to say that Vic Tafur said this when you can't find it on his Twitter account or any of his articles. But Vic Tafur still did something. He said there is clearly a disconnect somewhere when a team comes out flat for games like the Raiders did in New Orleans or keeps blowing big leads. One wonders how the players will keep responding to longer meetings and practices under the new staff when, hey, they're not getting the results. So the players are asked to practice longer, but we're not seeing that play out on the field. Oh, listen to your coaches, listen to what they have to say, and everything will work out. Well, the players are listening to the coaches and it's not working out. So are Derek Carr and McDaniels at odds with each other? The Raiders would have the 3rd overall pick in the draft this upcoming year. There's not only a fat QB draft class this year, but there is also a fat QB free agent class this year in 2023. The Raiders are 2-6. Josh McDaniels is making horrible coaching decisions in the second half, almost like he is trying to lose games in the opinion of some fans. And Derek Carr appears to be frustrated, the most frustrated we've seen him in his career, and on pace to have one of the worst statistical seasons of his career, even though he is a great quarterback. And now he's not able to talk about what he wants to talk about at the press conference, what he thinks is the problem. The only time that you have that issue is if it's about a leader on the team or the biggest leader on the team, which is the coach. And I believe if the Raiders lose this Sunday, we are going to learn more about what is going on inside that building. We're going to learn more about if there is any tension between Derek Carr and Josh McDaniels, because they are going up against a coach, Jeff Saturday, who has never coached an NFL game in his life. And the QB of the Colts is the 6th round pick, Sam Ehlinger, who has never won an NFL game as a starter, and the Colts are straight up tanking. So if the Raiders find a way to lose to this team, it will be as if they are trying to out-tank the tankers. And I think if that happens, that will set Derek Carr off, that will set Davante Adams off. They're going to be looking at Josh McDaniels saying, hey, what the hell is the plan here, dude? And PFF right now in their mock draft has the Raiders taking QB CJ Stroud with the 3rd overall pick. If the Raiders Raiders really are completely rebuilding. You can get rid of Derek Carr's contract, draft your own QB, and maybe even sign a bridge QB in free agency. And Colin Cowherd has talked about how Derek Carr would yield a lot of draft picks for the Raiders.
There's a big market for him, and I think Derek's to the point now he is exhausted from it.
And on one level, you can say, why would the Raiders go out there and get Davante Adams, spend all this money if they're just going to get rid of Derek Carr, if they're just going to rebuild? Maybe the intention for Ziegler and McDaniels was to test this out with Davante Adams and Derek Carr. Give Derek Carr his 1-year trial year. And if it did not work out, if they were not happy with the results, they were going to quickly shift to a rebuild, which seems to have happened. Or maybe it was a rebuild this whole time. They were never planning on rolling with Derek Carr after this season. They convinced him to sign the contract to make the fans happy, and now they can test out any future QB they want with Davante Adams. He would be a good testing tube to see if a QB is up to par to be NFL ready. So you got Bryce Young, Will Levis, CJ Stroud. You also have Anthony Richardson in Florida, the real dual threat who could be very interesting in this upcoming draft. And you got Hendon Hooker of Tennessee of the Volunteers, who's really developed as a great deep passer. So this is a really loaded QB draft class at the very top. And let's be honest, there's a big difference between having the 3rd overall pick as opposed to the 10th. So the Raiders, if they are thinking of getting a new quarterback in the draft next year, they do have a preference to lose games so you get a high pick in the draft. That's just a straight up fact. Miami Dolphins, we know that they may have been guilty of tanking. We learned about this through the Brian Flores lawsuit. So it's not far-fetched to think that other teams do it. And here's my thing. Derek Carr is still the 19th best QB, even though we're having this horrible season right now. CBS is ranking him as one of the 19th best QBs in the NFL. So it makes me think, like, how can you not win with Derek Carr this year? You must not be trying to win if you're blowing 3 17-point leads with Derek Carr, who even in his worst season ever is still the 19th best QB according to CBS Power Rankings. And it gets even more interesting when you look at the free agent class of QBs in this upcoming season. Tom Brady at the top of the list, 45 years old he will be, and he could be possibly the next QB of the Raiders if they do decide to move on from Derek Carr. I mean, that isn't really that far-fetched at this point. He's not happy with the Buccaneers. We know Dana White confirmed that Mark Davis wanted Tom Brady. It was going to happen in 2020, literally 2 years ago, and John Gruden stopped it. John Gruden stopped it because he actually believed in Derek Carr and was putting together something special. And so could Brady reunite with Josh McDaniels, the guy who lets him yell at him on the sideline and treat him like a lapdog? Of course Brady would love to come into that situation where he could be the king again, yell at Josh McDaniels some more, and hopefully, in their opinion, win some championships. And think about it, Brady, he's only going to want to play for 1 year. That's a perfect opportunity to also draft a QB, let him sit under Brady, watch how he works, learn the system, and then start the next year after. And then you also have some great bridge QBs here, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, but the most interesting QB is Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo, who also has some experience with Josh McDaniels. The New England Patriots drafted Jimmy Garoppolo. Josh McDaniels has played and called games with Jimmy Garoppolo, and he's very unhappy with the 49ers who tried to replace him with Trey Lance, and now they're stuck with Jimmy Garoppolo because Trey Lance had an injury. You even had the situation where Jimmy G said, "Your plays suck, man," referring to Kyle Shanahan.
There was a clip of you in the game, and it appeared like you said, "Your plays suck, man." Did you say that?
I don't know. I can't read lips. I'm sure I've said a lot worse things on the field than that, so I'm glad they caught that rather than something else, but I'm not sure exactly what I was saying, but it is what it is.
So you already have 2 QBs in this free agent class who've worked with Josh McDaniels. Then you got a third one, and Jacoby Brissett, who's put together some decent games with the Cleveland Browns. Yes, he's not expected to be their starting quarterback because they have Deshaun Watson going to be the starting quarterback soon, but Brissett has stepped in and played some nice games. Yeah, he's had a couple picks here and there that really crapped the bed for the team, but overall, he's been better than expected. And keep in mind, he was also drafted by the New England Patriots and has literally played some games with Josh McDaniels as the play caller. But the Raiders have been completely disappointing. There's no excuse right now for how they're performing, and I don't really think you could blame the players on the offensive side of the ball. I think the players have clearly demonstrated that they can play and execute certain plays very well, which they do in the first half of many games, but unfortunately, the coaching staff seems to shift things in a certain direction towards the second half of the game that puts them in a position to lose, to straight up lose. And it makes you think, do they want to lose? Do they want to rebuild at this point? Did they think, hey, maybe this team was better than we thought in the offseason, and now that we spent some time with them in the regular season, we're realizing, hey, might be better to tank. And Josh McDaniels probably has a fat contract, just like Gruden did, where he can do whatever he wants and just hope for some success later later on in the distant future. We will be live this upcoming game on Sunday, paying close attention to Josh McDaniels' decision making, seeing if in the second half he's actually trying to win the football game, or maybe he's going to call some suspect plays again that put him in a position to get the 3rd overall draft pick. Live during the game on Sunday. Make sure you turn on notifications so you do not miss it.